The Trump administration was dealt a massive blow in court today over the deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles, but they could double down anyway. We'll have more on what comes next in a minute, but first, some details on this ruling. Earlier today, a federal judge ruled that the deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles by Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was illegal. US District Judge Charles Breyer concluded that Trump's use of thousands of federalized California National Guard members and US Marines to provide protection to federal agents during an aggressive immigration crackdown in the Los Angeles area ran afoul of the Posse Comitatus Act, a 19th century law that generally prohibits the use for troops for domestic law enforcement purposes. But this line from Judge Breyer really stood out, at least for me. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have stated their intention to call National Guard troops into service in other cities across the country, Breyer wrote in his 52-page opinion, thus creating a national police force with the president at its chief. Cenk, before we get into what might come next from the Trump administration, what do you make of this?
Yeah, so this is the courts upholding the law, and it is really good news. So the biggest question is going to be when the Supreme Court agrees with them, what does Donald Trump do? Does he ignore court orders, or does he go, well, I gave it a shot. I try to do a military takeover of the streets of America and tread all over your rights, but wow, the court stopped me. I mean, I hope so. I hope that's where this ends. But if it ends in Trump going, no, I'm above the law and I'm going to destroy a rule of law and not listen to the courts, then it'll be an epic disaster. And that'll be one of the most determinative things in the entire second Trump term. But for now, there's a district court. There's 2 layers above it. There's appeals, and then there is, those are the circuit courts, and then there's the Supreme Court. So it'll get appealed up to that. Is the ruling legally sound? Unquestionably. I mean, this is what we said from day one. It's an obvious violation of the Posse Comitatus law. And so here's what I want to explain to some of the Trump supporters that they honestly, I believe they often struggle with. So if you don't like a law, you're supposed to change it. You're supposed to go vote on it in Congress, then have it go to the president and sign it. And then, okay, you got rid of the Posse Comitatus law. I would disagree with you. I don't think you should get rid of it. I think it's a wonderful thing that makes us what we are. We're not a developing country with military in the streets and military occupation. Military is trained to target enemies. And what it does is it turns American citizens into the enemies of the US military. And that is a disastrous idea, but you could make that case. No, I think it's gonna keep us safer and pass a law getting rid of the earlier law. But if you don't do that, you do not have a right in America to just ignore laws. Oh, that law clearly applies here. I don't care, is not a legitimate argument to make in America, in a democracy, and in a country that believes in rule of law as opposed to anarchy.
Yep, and I think it's worth pointing out that one of the biggest days of protest over Trump's actions like this, like that deployment, the No Kings protests, which again, one of the single biggest days of protest in US history, just announced today. They're doing another one on October 18th. So that'll be very interesting to watch as that develops. But Trump is just giving people fuel to show up, to participate, to join that movement. Is despite this ruling, the Trump administration shows no sign of slowing in its quest to occupy major cities across the country. On Sunday, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said nothing is off the table. Noem confirmed Sunday while appearing on CBS's Face the Nation that DHS intends to add more resources to operations being conducted by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, in Illinois and other states, but declined to give details over security concerns for agents and investigators on the ground. She also claimed that Trump's deployment of the National Guard in LA earlier this year prevented the city from burning down, and said her agency has arrested 5,000 individuals in the city and removed them from the US. And then there's the question of what cities would come next, and to which Noem responded, I would encourage every single city, San Francisco, Boston, Chicago, whatever they are, if they want to help make their city safer, more prosperous, they should call us. However, no details are available right now over any federal involvement or deployment of the National Guard or federal agents to major cities in red states. And Cenk, I'm curious what you make of that. Why are they only focusing on blue states? If they really cared about tackling this issue that they claim is a pervasive one, why only blue cities?
Yeah, in fact, some of the most crime-ridden cities, as a matter of percentages, are in the red states. Some of the top cities that have crime problems are Oklahoma City, Dallas, and New Orleans. And by the way, Jackson, Mississippi as well. So, but the problem is, if you go into those states that are run by Republicans, then you're saying the Republicans did something wrong. And they don't want to say that. They want to say, oh my God, the Democrats running these states and cities are terrible, and they forced us to do a takeover because they're so incompetent, and the Republicans came to save you from crime. And that doesn't work as well if the Republicans are saving you from crime from other Republicans. So that's why this is political in nature and has nothing to do with your actual safety. So if they wanted to help you on the crime issue, which is a separate issue, they could actually bring in a lot of federal agents, and that might be welcome, and is often is welcome in those big cities and all across the country. So what do I mean by that? The federal government has a lot of law enforcement at their disposal. The FBI, the DEA, and so many other agencies, and very often they do work with local police. In fact, you might remember the story we did in Nevada. The FBI and local police worked to bust up a ring of potential pedophiles who were trying to sexually abuse young girls in Las Vegas. That's the story where out of the 8 people captured, one of them was an Israeli government official, and he was allowed to escape back to Israel. But that's an instance of where the FBI and local law enforcement work together, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is not a violation of the law. The Posse Comitatus Act talks about how the military cannot police American citizens, so they can't, for example, cordon off a perimeter. They can't prevent people from coming into a certain place. They can't arrest people. So the law on that is super clear. I hate scams, especially the ones that target seniors, and Medicare's chock full of them. Between commission-hungry brokers and thousands of confusing plan options, most seniors aren't on the best plan for them. That's why I partner with Chapter. They're fully independent and they work for you, not the insurance companies. That's really important. They can review all your options in under 20 minutes, and the average senior they help saves over $1,100 a year. And the best part of it is, it doesn't cost you a thing. Call 301-969-2545 to connect with a Chapter advisor today. And here, A, they're violating it very clearly and brazenly. And B, they're doing it in a way that is obviously political and not trying to actually solve the crime issue, which people are legitimately concerned about. What they're trying to do is create an environment where military rule becomes normal. So when that military is then ordered by the president as basically military police at large, now no longer policing the rest of the world, but policing the American population. So that is disaster number one. And disaster number two is that once that begins, it's all about politicizing this to try to smear Democrats rather than actually to protect you. So it has no upside and nothing but downside. So the policies are already terrible, but none of that really matters as much as the fact that it is illegal. So whether you agree or disagree with the policy, the courts are right here. This is brazenly illegal. And so we'll see if the Supreme Court says laws don't matter anymore. That would be disaster number one. Or if the Supreme Court says, yeah, obviously it's against the law, as they should. And then Trump goes, well, I don't care what the courts say. So those are your two disaster scenarios. We haven't hit them yet. If the courts hold like this, and then Trump is then forced to withdraw from the cities and to get back within the law, then that'll be America and its system of government working, which will be a stress test on America. But if we pass that test, that'll be great news. Right now, we're in the middle of that test.
Yeah, one thing I want to just highlight here, I'm totally with you. There are bad outcomes potentially here with Trump ignoring that ruling if it's if it's disfavorable, or the Supreme Court greenlighting this. But I want to take a second to talk about the human cost here. And a friend was telling me over this weekend, they live in DC. There was ICE activity in their neighborhood last week. And there was an incident that he witnessed. A father and his young toddler-aged daughter were in their car. He was ripped out by agents, stopped and ripped out by agents and detained, taken away. And they left this child alone in the car. Didn't offer to find a safe place for her to go, just left her there. That is the barbarism inherent in what they are doing. Members of the community, dozens of people quickly flooded the streets, and I'm sure there were many good Samaritans there who helped this kid maybe find a relative or somewhere to go. But that story is not uncommon. And just seeing how much it shook up my friend from having to witness this, like, these are happening. These stories, these scenarios they're happening all over the country, and they will continue to happen. And treating this as some, like, not saying you're doing this, but the power centers in this country are treating this as some like legal exercise, or going through the courts as some formality. And I understand it is important, an important tool of keeping the president in check. I don't have a lot of faith in our institutions to do that, but I feel like we often lose sight of what these policies and what these operations really look like. That kid is going to be traumatized for the rest of her life because of this.
Yeah, and I have one last thing to say. Look, guys, there's a lot of laws that I don't like. So money in politics is a disaster. It's totally ruined our democracy. The Supreme Court decisions on it, Citizens United, Bellotti and Buckley, are ridiculous. They're preposterous. They're talking about how corporations are human beings and have rights to speech, and speech is money, so they can give infinite money to our politicians. It's just legalized bribery. I despise it. If one of our allies was president, I wouldn't counsel them, just ignore it, dude, we don't like the law. That's not how it works. So that's why we try really hard through Wolfpack to get an amendment so that we can change that legally, the right way in a democracy. So, and it is super difficult to do, but that's what you do if you have an unjust law. You don't just break it. And especially when the people in power break the law, that sends a disastrous message that we're no longer in a democracy. This is exactly what people were worried about under Donald Trump. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.